Namaste. Welcome to my Advent Calendar, day 5. And this morning's reading is going to be a little bit different. I'm going to format it in the way of a inspiration as an affirmation for this day. But before I do that, I want to talk about the draw for tomorrow. I am doing a weekly draw, not just the draw on December 24th. And so the deadline to enter the draw on Friday is the previous night, Thursday at 7 p.m. my time. So you will have needed to comment on this video or any video by 7 p.m. on Thursday. So you could have for tomorrow's draw a maximum of 5 entries: Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And then next week's draw will be the same thing, 7 p.m. the previous Thursday. Okay, and I'll be sure to put that down below. Sorry, I didn't do that earlier. Okay. So welcome. Hello, Saskia and Arya. Sarah Noon, a warm welcome to you. All right, I'm shuffling up my little tiny Llewellyn deck this morning. As we go forth into this day or into the later part of the day, may this message inspire, warm your heart, connect with you in a way that feels you could take 3, 4, 5 words and just repeat them several times and find an assurity, a sense of, yeah, this is what I need to capture in this moment. And as always, I ask this message be in the highest for the greatest good, and that no harm be done, so be it. Welcome to Tina. I guess you'd like to see the cards. Ooh, and before I start talking again, let's welcome Magnum Opus. I look forward to seeing you in the chat, and thank you for supporting my channel. All right, so these are 3 minors. Just want to acknowledge that. Zoom in a little bit. Well, first of all, may you be in wonder of this world. May you stand in amazement of all that is offered. And allow those sensations and feelings deep within your physical body to rise to the surface and feel them as vibrations on your skin, in your heart, inner knowing. Gosh, how many years ago was it now? I think I'm looking at the 7 of Wands as a card that is one also that stands in defense of this earth's magnificence. And when I'm putting all of these cards together today, there is a sense of allowing emotion to fill your being. And for those of you that weren't around then, two of my daughters had gone off to do something quite dangerous. They were in old ancient growth forest on Vancouver Island in Canada, British Columbia. And there had been people there for months and months, and there were people who they were digging like moats and chaining themselves deep in moats so the machinery couldn't come into the forest. There were people who had fixed themselves in trees and all kinds of places and ways to protect the forest. And whether you were on the front lines or you were back in the kitchens, the makeshift kitchens, or you were wherever you were, you never quite knew what was going to happen the next hour. And in my heart of hearts, I stood very proud that two of my daughters were there. And I felt this so deeply in my belly. Not fear for them, but wow, my children would actually do that. And it was quite a experience for me to go. They were there a long time to go through from a distance. So on this day, may you truly feel what it feels like to feel, and allow that to come to the surface. Perhaps you will find a emotion that you have wanted to share with another that has been lurking beneath the surface. You are tall and principled and fearless, and others stand in awe of you. And so let them know what is in your heart of hearts. This will allow a softening of sorts and a sharing of perhaps a bit of a burden that you hold. It's good to see you too, Vicky. Welcome. So take a deep breath in and out, and let your heart be full. Okay, so for today's favorite things, I was going through, not literally going through because I have lists. I'm a bit of an Excel nerd. My decks, and the task was choose 3 mass market decks you recommend for beginners, and choose 3 mass market decks that intermediate plus tarot readers, if you haven't been working with them, you've missed something kind of message. And part of this criteria is all these decks have to still be available. They're currently still being produced. And so this is what I did. And of course there are more, but these 3 I think, really have a place. Depending on, of course, your taste. And, there's been a lot of questions that have arisen from this short series so far, and some strong responses. And when I recommend spending a long time with one deck, this is a method. This is a method. And it might be something that's really, really difficult. And it is, I feel, an invaluable experience if you're struggling with learning to actually build a confidence with reading. If you are a seasoned reader, of course, you can do a deep dive and work with other decks at the same time. So, yeah. So these 3 decks, if you don't know them, they are, well, the first 2 have been trimmed, Druidcraft and Llewellyn and Spirit Within. And this deck, the Spirit Within deck, is by Stephen Bright. And Stephen is very well respected in the tarot community. And this deck is an amazing deck for beginners because it is one of those decks where the colors, at least in the minor arcana, are sorted. So you know that if you have just let me get some minors on the, if you are in the goldy brown area, these are wands, and the pentacles are green, and the cups are also colored this purpley periwinkle blue color. So it's easy to identify. There's also this getting away from pronouns and gender identification with the use of silhouette. So that works very well. I think it is also a fairly neutral location. If you look closely, you can see lots of UK scenes. It is a little bit, even though it is in silhouette, the cultural diversity is minimal. But I think for a beginner deck, there's something about its simplicity and the way that, so if you look around the illumination of the hand and the Ace of Wands, right, there's this very clever way that the creator has that gives you cues and clues into what the focus is of the deck. And there's no symbols, there's no little marks to learn. It's certainly not overwhelming in any way. And the major arcana is really pretty. And so I think it's a great place to start. And also, Stephen is queer, so if you look closely at the silhouettes, there's all kinds of relationships and gender representation, so it's great, yeah, in that way. I'm stitching hand crocheted antique laces to a handbag. I marvel the intricacy, beauty, and the tiny brownish blood stains that make them more precious. Life is full of wonders. Oh my goodness. Antique laces into a bag. Wow, that's beautiful, Amelia. You're such a crafty person. If you haven't checked out Amelia's YouTube channel, she has some really interesting videos. The Llewellyn Tarot. Now this has been trimmed, and probably as a beginner deck you would not take off the edges. However, it may be a first trim, you know, a deck that you could take off the edges almost in a way to the borders, to test yourself, right? To get better at recognizing the cards and not relying on the titles on the cards. The artwork in this deck is really, really stunning, and the minor arcana is very recognizable. The majors might take a little bit more time. This is the Fool card, and if you have a love of oil paintings, this major arcana is really, really beautiful. Hi, Clara. Welcome. And the creator of this deck is Anna Marie Ferguson. And it is, honestly, it's one of those decks where you can get lost in time. And I think among these three beginner mass market decks I'm showing you, they all have significant guidebooks. And so if you're wandering away from or looking for a deck other than the Waite-Smith, and of course I would suggest at some point a Waite-Smith deck, a version of it, be part of any tarot reader's study. It's just an invaluable addition to learning. However, here we have another prolific, also the richness of the paintings of Will Worthington are, it's like you can just hold these cards in your hand and stare at the details in the paintings. And there are things that you can find, you know, even years later, that you may not have noticed. I mean, it's so incredibly beautiful and powerful emotionally as well too. And it's absolutely imperative that if you are, and if you don't have this deck and you are not a beginner, the guidebook for this deck is extraordinary. It is so well written, and it is a reference that you can use when working with other decks as well too. So these are my top 3 suggestions for beginner mass market decks. And I considered a lot of contemporary ones as well, like more current, because I know all of these have been around for years. Okay, so the 3 that I suggest for wandering a little more deeply are these 3. And you know, it's funny when there's a mass market tarot deck tag that's recirculating. I think it's top 10 mass market decks or something. I sorted my Excel spreadsheet into, because I have a column that I added for, I put I's and MM's or something like that, and there were a lot of mass market decks. 100 and I don't know how many. And there was a lot of new ones there as well too. And it's funny that not only are none of the decks have I chosen are they brand new, and I think of the 6 decks, 5 of them were on my table already. So that should tell you something as well too. So these 3 decks are the Marielle Tarot, the Margaret Peterson, and the Herb Crafter. And I have done extensive deep dives into all of these decks. So on my channel you can listen to me ramble on for weeks and weeks about these decks. They've all taught me something about the tarot, and they've all surprised me in various ways. And I feel like even after doing that long deep dive with each of these decks, there's always something to learn. And for example, the deck on the left, the accompanying guidebook, Landscapes of the Abyss, it's like I've read it so many times, and it's always on my side table because I know the little bits and bobs I want to share with people. And there's so much goodness in there. And you know, at some point Marie White said she was going to write a more extended book, because what came out in the press was only a portion of what she had written for the cards. But I think at this point there are many creators, many content creators on YouTube that have done deep dives with this deck, and there's quite a bit of material out there, as well as some brilliant interviews with Marie White, that we have a really good feel for what's going on. Now the version of this deck I'm showing you is a first edition that has the right and left borders trimmed off. And the current edition is a different shape. It's more square. And there are a few cards that are different. And if you had an opportunity to, if you spotted an older edition on eBay or something, I would certainly pick it up. All right, Amelia, I'm so happy that I cooked my Druidcraft deck. It's an absolute treasure to work with these days. Yeah, and I just smile. I watched one of Amelia's videos where she cooked a deck, and it's so interesting. I go to art class at least once a day, so I support special needs students in a high school program. And right now they are painting acrylic on canvas. And sometimes canvases need to be wiped because things don't go right. And it's funny, I laughed one day because there's a little section. I don't know if it's in an adjacent article on this deck or if it's actually in the beginning of this deck, but there's one of her friends writes how Margaret sometimes would wipe an entire canvas, but of course when you wipe a canvas, everything doesn't come off, and so there are layers of older intentions of the paintings that merge through. And it is a highly intuitive and emotional deck, and yet there's a lot to be learned from the poetry and the words of Margaret Peterson as well too. And I can't say enough. And I loved our discussions, because there's different ways of seeing these cards. As I suggested yesterday, perspective really does matter, and there's a very different, you see something really different looking at a card through a magnifying glass upside down or on a screen. Yeah. Vicky, let's go to Vicky. Well, I would say take the cards, and this might be true of any deck you are struggling with. I think I do have a few videos about this in my YouTube page. I would suggest that if you're struggling with a deck, to pick a few cards that you really like, and you could journal with them, look deeply into them, investigate those cards, get familiar with the art style. I've had people, the same kind of questions come up with the Wild Unknown Tarot. People have no idea why anybody would like that deck. And so you intuitively or somewhere in your gut, you know a certain deck, there's something to it that pulls you in. And we've talked about this before, but I strongly recommend when you start open a new deck, you pick one, your favorite card and your least favorite card, one that is really challenging. You could even pick a few cards that you just don't really get at all. And yesterday, I had a comment that led me to go pull the Slow Tarot out of my cabinet. And somebody was asking me about the very challenging Seven of Pentacles in that deck. And it's a really hard card. The whole suit of coins in the Slow Tarot is really difficult. And so I pulled out that card and I sat with it, and I just started, I replied to her at length. I just started describing the card, the picture, the people, what was going on. And as I was describing the card, I began to allow other observations to come through. I know the King of Cups in that deck does the same thing for people. It's a really hard card. So with the Marielle, you have to get to know its language. So what I would suggest, Vicky and others who are watching this, is that you find, I did a video on like all of the Wildcat cards, and I did another video that picked out another symbol. Watch those two videos, because that's another way to connect with a deck, is you pull out all of the like symboled cards and spend some time with them. Okay. All right. And the third one. I had to rebuy this deck. I trimmed it and edged it on your recommendation. And I have to say, if you have never done trimming of decks, US Games cardstock is very thick, and it's not the easiest of cardstocks to remove the borders. But it was fine. I trimmed it, I edged it, and then I dropped one of them between a crack on my patio, and so I lost my Mushroom Tower card. This deck has taught me so much, and about everything. Reciprocity. That little guidebook is a nugget and a treasure. And the way this deck is organized, if you spend some time with its, and this is the same with the Marielle as well too, if you spend time with its structure and you familiarize yourself with its underlying structure, then you can build from there. So in the Herbcrafter Tarot, there is a theme that goes on with each of the numbers. And there's also an expanded theme that goes on with each of the suits and the object that represents the suits. So it's like you have to, you got to take it apart before you can put it together. And maybe that is maybe I'll just leave that with you today, because I think that is a really great tarot tip. And I don't think I've actually ever written this down before. When you are struggling with a deck, in some capacity, take it apart. So, take out in the Marielle all the Wildcat cards and spend a month with the Wildcat cards. In the meantime, you're working and reading with other decks, sure. But you've got all those Wildcat cards, and every day you look at those Wildcat cards and you get to know them. Or maybe in the Herbcrafter deck, you are going to take out, I don't know, the eights. All of the eights are connected to roots, root plants. And maybe this is harvest season and you are going to be working with some new roots, or there's some roots on the eights that you've never tried actually working with. Maybe you've never bought fresh turmeric or fresh ginger, and you begin to explore and contemplate the power of root plants and what eating root plants might do for your roots. So yeah, that's the advice for today. If you're struggling with a deck, take it apart and just take it in pieces. All right. Thank you. This has been a great chat this morning. Lovely connections among everyone here. And just a reminder, the draw tomorrow, the deadline will be tonight. So if you want 5 entries, make sure you come back later and comment on this video. And I will see you soon. Take good care. Namaste.